There's an interesting topic out there regarding Brandon Aiyuk. You see the San Francisco 49ers, and you think they have talent everywhere. They have talent to spare. They could replenish the draft system with more added picks by getting rid of Brandon Aiyuk. Brandon Aiyuk has been a head case. Brandon Aiyuk has been a distraction. And noisy off seasons almost always and typically lead to disappointing regular seasons. I'm lower on the Cincinnati Bengals than everyone else, given how noisy they've been, whether it's contract extensions for T. Higgins or other issues. Brandon Aiyuk has been a disruption to the locker room. And it leads me to think, why are the San Francisco 49ers dealing with this? Why are the San Francisco 49ers willing to deal with all of this in a league where you can find wide receivers everywhere? The supply and demand is not a problem. There's enough wide receivers to go around in the NFL. You could give up Brandon Aiyuk, get a solid wide receiver back, and get a few picks for him. Potentially a first-round pick. Who knows? But it's clear the San Francisco 49ers are not going to pay Brandon Aiyuk. And he just came off his best season in the pros. It's very possible Brandon Aiyuk is never as elite as he was last season. It's highly possible. He could get injured. His trade value can only go down. His trade value can only go down this year. It's not possible to me that I believe he can be a top 3 wide receiver when there's so many mouths to feed in this San Francisco offense. It's very clear where Brandon Aiyuk wants to be. He wants to go be with his buddy or Jaden Daniels. Both guys went to ASU. Not sure if that overlapped at a time. Potentially it did. I would say no, though. But Brandon Aiyuk clearly wants to be on the Washington Commanders. The Washington Commanders have not necessarily been a well-run organization over the past its entire existence. Its entire existence, it hasn't been a great organization. If there's a team willing to give up way too much for a wide receivers market who will never be as high, why wouldn't they give up why wouldn't they give up Brandon Aiyuk for what the Commanders could offer? Why not? I've thought about this. And here is my hypothesis on why the San Francisco 49ers are so hesitant to ship Brandon Aiyuk out of this locker room. He's been a head case. He's been noisy. He's been disruptive. And like I mentioned before, noisy and loud off seasons almost always lead to teams with disappointing regular seasons. You just want to be out of that business. And if Brock Purdy is as elite as the San Francisco 49ers tell me he is, and as San Francisco 49ers fans tell me he is, and now people in the media who are too scared to swing a bat when it comes to giving commentary in sports think he is, if Brock Purdy is so elite, why would he be so beholden to Brandon Aiyuk? In which a lot of people would say is the second best wide receiver on their own team. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that. But Deebo Samuel's there. And the kid from Florida's there. And Christian McCaffrey's there. And George Kittle's there. The San Francisco 49ers, and this is just my hypothesis, this is why I believe the San Francisco 49ers won't trade Brandon Aiyuk. They're not completely sold on Brock Purdy either. They believe, just like how I believe, Brock Purdy is somewhere between the 10th to 15th best quarterback in the NFL. And without all that talent, Brandon Aiyuk, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, the Trent Williams on the offensive line, he wouldn't be as awesome as he is. And it's not to say Brock Purdy sucks. There's people out there that are completely the other direction. Brock Purdy's terrible. That's not true. But it's almost like the San Francisco 49ers are putting up with all this nonsense with Brandon Aiyuk because they don't trust Brock Purdy to go out there and win games with one less weapon until they know if the kid from Florida can actually play. It's almost like the San Francisco 49ers are giving it one last go around with Brock Purdy. It's almost they want to go one more season. Let's see if Brock Purdy can be as good as he was the past season and a half. Another year in the system with all these weapons. Let's try to win a Super Bowl. But it's almost as if they won't trade Brock Purdy. It's almost as if they won't trade Brandon Aiyuk because they're not completely sold on Brock Purdy. It's almost like they know if Brandon Aiyuk is gone, we're not entirely sure Brock Purdy can be as reliable and as good as he's been over the past season and a half. It's almost as if the San Francisco 49ers need to see one more season before they give Brock Purdy a massive $60 million extension with all these weapons and see if he can replicate what he did the past couple of years. Because if Brock Purdy struggles to be the guy that he has been the past year and a half, statistically speaking, we know in the playoffs he wasn't very good. It's almost as if the 49ers saw those playoff performances. In the Super Bowl, he was fine. And up until the last drives of the Green Bay Packers and Lions game, he wasn't very good. It took a bounced ball off of a Detroit Lions player head for them to get back in that game. It's almost as if the San Francisco 49ers are so hesitant to trade Brandon Aiyuk, despite all of his controversy, despite all of his disruptiveness, despite his ability to potentially derail that locker room with how much of an annoyance he's been in that San Francisco 49ers locker room. It's almost as if they're willing to deal with all these issues with Brandon Aiyuk because they need to see if Brock Purdy is indeed the guy he has been over the past year and a half statistically. It's almost as if the San Francisco 49ers don't believe in Brock Purdy enough to take away one weapon from him. Do you remember what Brock Purdy was without Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams at times? Struggled to complete passes in the Packers playoff game. Struggled and lost 3 straight games to the Browns, Vikings, and another team which name is escaping me. I believe it was the Cincinnati Bengals. It's almost as if when the stars are really bright, when the lights are really bright, and everyone is watching Brock Purdy, they know deep down he's not actually this elite player that we're telling everyone he is and that San Francisco 49ers fans are projecting he is. It's almost as if they know if they take just one weapon away from Brock Purdy and one that's as good as Brandon Aiyuk, it could all come tumbling down. We saw that in the Packers game in the playoffs last year when they lost Deebo Samuel. Couldn't really move the ball very well. The Lions, that game, 3/4 of it wasn't very good. And then in the Super Bowl, when he had all of his weapons, all healthy, he was pretty good. He was good. That's what Brock Purdy is to me. Good. But it's almost as if the San Francisco 49ers are so hesitant to trade Brandon Aiyuk because they're worried about how well Brock Purdy will adjust to, instead of having 4 all-pro elite level players on their offense, he has 3. We've seen what happened in the regular season, lost 3 straight games when he was down a couple of those key players. I don't think it's crazy. For a team like the San Francisco 49ers have been able to develop talent, I do find it very fishy that they're so begrudgant in holding on to Brandon Aiyuk. And I think a lot of the reason why they're holding on to Brandon Aiyuk is because they're just not sure about Brock Purdy just yet. They'd like to see it again and again and again. And if Brock Purdy struggles this year, or maybe comes back down to reality, to what I think he is, a top 12 to 14 quarterback in the NFL, that's when the San Francisco 49ers know who to pay. Brandon Aiyuk and not Brock Purdy. And to figure out where they would go from there. I don't think it's crazy. I don't think it's crazy.